Okay, we're back. Today's lesson was supposed to be Module 3, Lesson 10. The reason for the mess up, if you are connected to us through Facebook on our Fout 5th grade page, is that I was excited because Miss Larry and I figured out how to do this through YouTube instead of using Facebook Live. I know some of you do not have Facebook, so I didn't want to leave anybody out that was connected to us through Remind if I didn't have to. Today's lesson is really just piggybacking off what we did yesterday. The first question on the page is 2.5 plus 1 1/5. All right, yesterday we discussed how fractions, when you add and subtract, it's all about fair sharing, okay? So when you do this, you cannot add the fractions as we see them. Just because there's a whole number with it doesn't change anything. We still have to look at that 2 and the 5 and make sure we get the same amount of pieces in our denominator so we can add these up correctly, okay? Now, some of my friends struggle at school on this because they do all this hard work. I mean, they remember how to change their denominators, they get everything right, and they add, and then what do they forget? They forget to add up the whole numbers, okay? So please make sure as your children or kids, if you're watching this, please remember to check on those whole numbers when you get done and you get everything added up and make sure it's simplified. Now, when we look at this 2 and this 5, we can do this one of two ways. We can either multiply these denominators together, or we can skip count by 2s and we can skip count by 5s until we land on the same thing. Now, as small as these are, by multiplying them together, we're going to get the same number no matter what. If we used numbers, parents, like 9 and 6, okay, if those were our denominators, this is just an example, we know that 9 and 6 can both go to 18, okay? And sometimes the kids will just do 9 times 6, and the number is 54, and then later they're going to have to simplify, and that's the thing that they forget to do because they didn't find their smallest common denominator, okay? So when we look at 2 and 5, we know these are going to change to 10. So I'm going to go ahead and write my new denominator as 10 over to the side. Then we're going to create a multiplication problem to prove how we got there, because we're just creating equivalent fractions. So when we do this, we have to remember that the numbers in the middle have to be the same on top and bottom, because we're multiplying by a fraction that really means 1. We're going to do 1/2 times 1, technically. When our denominator is the same on top and bottom, they equal 1, okay? So we know that 2 times 5 equals 10, and we know that 5 times 2 equals 10, okay? So here we go. This is what we have here. So to keep with what we just talked about, we're going to have to make 5 our numerator here, and we're going to have to make 2 our numerator down here, okay? So when we change here and we get everything we need on our page, we're going to simply multiply our 2 numerators together here and here, okay? So 1 times 5 is 5, and 1 times 2 is 2. Now, we end up having what I said, equivalent fractions, fractions that look different, but they mean the same thing. 1/2 and 5/10 are both half. So we know that we did this right, all right? So add these up. 5/10 plus 2/10. We're going to get 7/10. And we're also going to remember to add our whole numbers up. 2 plus 1 is 3, okay? The last thing we want to check is we want to make sure that this fraction is in simplest form. Simplest form means that we can't group this in any different way to make it look smaller. For example, 1/2 would have been simplest form for 5/10 because we could have put these both as groups of 5, okay? 7 is a prime number, okay? It can't get any smaller. 1 times 7 is its only multiplication fact. So the only way that this could be simplified is if we could skip count by 7s and land on 10. And we know that we can't do that, okay? That's question A. Question B looks very similar to it. It's 2 1/2 plus 1 3/5. So you're going to follow that same exact procedure for B because its denominator is 2 and 5, okay? Question C, we have 1 1/5 plus 3 1/3, okay? The denominators have changed here. We've got 5 and 3. So again, the 2 steps you can follow, you can either multiply these together and get 15, or you could skip count by 3s and skip count by 5s. Now, you know you're going to also land on 15, the way that this works, okay? So get your denominators both the same, change them both to 15, and then add everything up, the denominators and your whole numbers. When you're finished, make sure that you have everything in simplest form, okay? Those questions go on like that, all the way on that page, down to question H. The only thing that you might want to be careful about is somewhere in there you may get a fraction that is improper, okay? So when you add up your 2 fractions, you may get a numerator that's bigger than your denominator. Just be careful of that. We worked on that yesterday. We know how to regroup and make another whole out of that. When we look at question 2, it just wants to know what she did on the weekend. So that would be Saturday and Sunday. I guess that she's including Friday in her weekend. If you add all 3 of them, it's nothing different. You're going to make all your denominators the same. It's 3s and 2s. So we know that we can change those to 6. Question 3 is another addition problem. Question 4 ends up being subtraction, and it wants you to prove that he's wrong. So both of these start out with 5 pieces. So what the book usually suggests is drawing a tape diagram. A tape diagram is simply a square or rectangles, okay, to prove the picture. So we want to start with 5 on both of these. So I'm simply going to take my rectangles and split them into 5 sections. Now, they don't have to be perfect, but I did draw 2 of them so we could have them side by side and you could prove that 5 minus 1 and 5 minus 1 and 1/4 are not the same, because he says that 5 minus 1 and 1/4 would be more than 4. Okay? So, now I'm going to mark out 1 on the top so we can see that 5 minus 1 is exactly 4. Okay? On the bottom, I can also mark out 1, but there's that added fraction over there beside it. So we're still taking away, okay? So when we take away, we know we're going to have to go into this box here, and we're going to have to split it into fourths. If we split this into fourths, we know that it's going to end up being cut into this box that wasn't cut into before. All right? So I'm going to take my box, and to the best of my ability, I'm going to cut it into 4 sections, and I am going to, I'm just going to do kind of a zigzaggy line, okay, here, to show that I got rid of it. Now, we can clearly see that there is 1, 2, 3 boxes, and then 1, 2, 3/4 of this one. So the answer here is 3 3/4, and the answer here is 4. And we know that 3 is less than 4, so Matt would have been wrong. And that's all you had to do to show that, is just by drawing the picture and showing that you went more into that 4th box. Okay, so this was really today's lesson. Pretty easy. Tomorrow I'll check back in with you, and I'll make sure that I do the right lesson, not confuse anybody. Thank you for everybody that helped me today. Thank you, Miss Larry, for showing that we really could do this through YouTube and stuff. So this is really just a team effort to try to make sure that we get all these days in that we're supposed to, and it doesn't for any reason cut into our summer break. I know it really stinks to be out. You would rather have your kids at school. I would rather be at school teaching. Fractions are hard, I know, so thanks for sticking with me and getting your kids to do this work. When we come back, we'll be multiplying fractions. Hopefully everything goes well and we get to go back on March 30th, so this isn't an issue. I don't know. I hope this is working because this is what I see us doing, these video chats, if we don't go back for some reason. Again, I have no news of that whatsoever. I don't want anybody to panic. As far as I know, we are, and according to the governor, we're going to go back on March 30th. But if not, hopefully this will be a continuing way to reach your kids and get their educational needs met. Again, I'll see you in the morning. Thank you.